Corvair fun.
You know, all in all, it's a nice car.
It is a nice car.
They did it.
Come back if we had to bring
Yeah, I can't say that.
animals back like Corvair with a duck.
This is a model. My sister came along and
They tried the package self and decided
So where did it just went across the seats? Like not
it leveled the whole thing so we had the extra space
Monza,
because
which was this trimmed out like an Impala would
they're a lot
be.
younger than I am.
And then there was the
Then I would have to
Corsa,
sit
which was trimmed
Indian style, no seatbelts, 58-mile drive each way on the freeways.
Well, it was actually
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Even with,
It ain't bad, Sherman. It ain't bad.
What's taking the tires out? You got a spare tire?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's how you keep that wheel from getting cut.
No, there's some fuel lines.
obviously I'm tired.
Yep.
We got a tag.
Yep. Both of them have the tag.
Pretty.
We have tags. Tags are good.
This is, you know, Corvairs are really bizarre because, you know, if you look at a Volkswagen, they take the cooling fan and they stand it up so that the axis of the fan, the shaft of the fan, is horizontal. Here it's vertical. And they did that for packaging, but it's still driven off the crank, which is down there. So the belt makes a right-hand turn, and it has to be rotated 90 degrees for it to work. So the belt's doing some weird shit.
Well, what would they do with an AC car?
I have no idea.
Where's
I've never
Tom?
seen
We need
Tom,
Tom.
we got
compressor in it.
Tom, we got a
Sit
question.
on top.
Yeah, it's got to sit up. Well, that's
Yeah,
the condenser sits up
on the
here.
top.
Yes.
But I think there was another pulley
So
on this side.
with this belt and pulley setup,
Yes.
if the car had AC, where would the AC?
There'd be a companion. There you would have a double pulley at the back of the car.
So it would sit over here.
You sit over there,
Wow.
and there'd be lines that ran through the tunnel pan up into the passenger compartment, the inside of the trunk, for your evaporator unit, like an add-on air conditioning. So you'd have your compressor back here, and the location of the evaporator would vary from year to year.
So
If
the
you're-
belts would go down through there?
The belt would come. You'd have a compressor here,
And-
and instead of a single harness pulley
And the belt
down here,
would
you'd
be
have
here.
a double, and it would come down
And it
here.
would come up here, and
And
then
come
the
up on the
compressor
side,
would
yeah.
sit there.
Wow. Doesn't sound problematic at all.
They really weren't. They actually worked pretty well.
Really?
The issue was drag on the engine when
Yes.
it was running.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of drag. Now, if you're looking for a Corvair,
They
you
did.
say, I'm
Yes.
in the
That
business,
was all
I want a
Frigidaire
Corvair,
stuff.
I'm going to go buy a Corvair. So they open up this, the trunk hood, whatever you want to call it, and you look at the engine. This one is very good. It's a good example of what's supposed to be there. All of this engine tin is here. Not only is the engine tin here, and this is critical, but this gasket that you see that's all folded, this has to be there. Absolutely has to be there. This engine relies on air for cooling.
Yes. A lot
And
of air.
air is lazy. It takes the path of least resistance. So if you don't have tin or that gasket, the hot air, which is lighter and less viscous than cold air is supposed to be drawn in right here.
Right.
Right, you can see my fingers. It's drawn in right there. This is the drip tray so that the water doesn't get in the car. So that cold air is supposed to be drawn in that way, but if you're missing the gasket or some of the tin, the air short circuits. It leaves, the hot air leaves and comes right back into the inlet of that fan, the suction side of the fan, and boom, car will run hot.
Very hot.
Same thing with
all have
VWs, right?
Yes,
Some had two. Some
Some
had
had
four. Turbos have one.
correct.
So was the 4 carbs an option?
4 carb was an option. It was a 140 horse engine.
And that, for most people, that's the preferred engine.
I like this setup most of the time. There are times I want a little bit more, but these are easy to keep running.
So were the blocks different?
No, blocks were the same.
Heads were different.
The heads were different. Some of the engines had different cam. If you had different, obviously had several different levels of performance over the years. They went from 80 horsepower to 180 horsepower in different inclinations over the years.
Yeah, there was the 80, the 90, the 110. Was there a 95?
There was a 95. 95 is probably a better engine than the 110. It's actually torquier. The two carbs instead of one. Easier to balance the cylinders off to the sides the way they are. Your intake is way far away. You've got to have a long ram tube on each side to make it work with a single. And I don't think the ones that have used the 4-barrel, there's a 4-barrel conversion kit you can put on here. And I don't think that they run as well. I've driven a couple that I didn't like the way they run.
Well, they are better on the 140.
They're better on 104 than 140.
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't care for
trouble with the in cold weather with the 4-barrel.
Yes. Yep, yep,
The fuel
yep.
kind of clings to the
Right.
cold metal.
In a V8, for example, there is a fuel crossover or an exhaust crossover underneath the carburetor to preheat the air so that the fuel remains in suspension. It's vaporized, and you've got fuel vapor going to the cylinders as opposed to a mixture of air and wet fuel. And wet fuel washes down the sides of the cylinder and causes premature wear. Something I was going to say that was important along those lines. This setup is not bad because the carburetors sit right on what is a cast-in intake manifold. It heats up quickly and it gets the job done.
So what's the story about this car? Where did you find it? What do you know about it?
The day that Mark's Buick was to arrive, there was a Corvair show in San Diego. I wanted to be here for the arrival of the Buick. So after that day was over and did some yard work, I was sitting out back, looking at Facebook, looking at the event pictures, and this car shows up in one of the pictures with the for sale sign on cardboard in the back window. And actually, after I got home and early that morning before I went for the arrival party, I'd been looking for VW Beetles as we wanted to get another project car. And I saw a few nice Beetles. Never called, didn't want to bother. For some reason, I just wasn't into it as much as I should have been. I immediately called on this car, essentially committed to buy it that night. Sight unseen, hadn't heard it run, nothing. The price was good. The price was exceptional, as a matter of fact. So we went down the following Saturday, and I drove it home from Fallbrook. And it has had quite a bit of work done. The engine's been refreshed, the transmission's been gone through.
Now, were these wheels an option?
These were not an option. The only options you had were several different types of wheel covers in 65.
Yeah, they never had a styled steel wheel.
They never did, unfortunately.
So what we have on our 7.
Yeah.
So what did they make this for? Because those are 13-inch.
They were 13s originally. Those are Camaro or Chevelle.
Yeah, but they wouldn't put 13s on a Camaro.
No, those are 15s.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, those are 15s. They're a little small for my taste. We're probably going to go a little bit bigger when we finish the car.
A little bigger tire.
Yeah,
Definitely more tire
yeah.
too. Yes,
Those
and
are-
a better tire. 'Cause he's got the guy I bought it from. He has big and littles, and I don't care for that.
Did,
Walmart
they,
tires.
Yeah, Walmart
yes.
does.
did they just bolt on those wheels, or did they?
No, they bolt on. These
No, no.
carry this GM 5-bolt pattern. In
Nice.
fact, the brakes and everything on this are A-body brakes, except the front A-body brakes are the rear brakes. Yeah, I got to pull that handle.
Joyride.
I forget how to open the hood.
Oh, you have a key.
That's it. I think there was tricks to it.
The frunk?
Luggage compartment.
Oh, it's a stick. I didn't know.
It is, yeah.
Oh, there's a tire there.
Sears tire.
Yes.
Yeah, so how old is that?
I'm afraid to think, but we'll probably
Terrifying.
when we do the
pre-code?
tires on it, that one will probably come home and be hung on the garage wall up high.
Sears tradesman?
Guardsman. Sears Guardsman radial.
But this would have originally come with 13s.
Yeah, 650 13 tires. It's impossible to get 13
I know.
Hard to get 14.
BF Goodrich was making raised white lemon